Hunting in the US has a really long history. We refer to it as the North American model of conservation. It's the idea of sharing the responsibility for the wildlife across the US. Most hunters are really concerned with having a quick, clean kill. So with lead ammunition, maybe you might take the animal down quickly, but there's always scavengers. And for me personally, I feel that it's not within the ethics of making sure that animals don't suffer in the process if you're using lead ammunition and another animal feeds on that and then has to suffer for a long period of time due to lead poisoning.
Ventana Wildlife Society has been part of the condor recovery program since 1997 when we began releasing condors here in Big Sur. We monitor where the birds are feeding, and we also monitor nesting using different technologies, GPS transmitters, radio tracking, and those are tools we use to actually help us find if a bird dies. And the leading cause of death for the flock right now for the wild birds is lead poisoning, accounting for about 30% of the overall mortality. The mechanism of lead poisoning is the birds are out scavenging, and when they ingest game animals that have been shot, they actually ingest the fragments that are left behind in the carcass. It's pretty dramatic. The lead bullet hits and it just explodes. There's fragmentation immediately on impact, and these small, tiny fragments potentially could be ingested by condors. And then the stark contrast is the non-lead round, which comes in and immediately starts to spin. And if you look closer, you see no fragmentation. And the end result, the kill zone, so to speak, is pretty much the same.
It only takes a few bullets for that 20-pound bird to really start to feel the effects of what lead poisoning can do. They are incredibly important to the whole ecological system here in California as well as the entire world. So condors being scavengers, they help keep everything nice and clean. They help with that disease control. It's really important for people just in general. If you want to have a nice clean environment, we want these vultures there to help clean that up.
The key to future condor health and success is really in the hunting community. It is the lead that is causing the disruption. It is the lead that's causing the sickness and death. Condor populations could be self-sustaining, which is the big goal if only they weren't ingesting lead.
The impact that the Raptor Center has goes way beyond the 1,000 birds that arrive here for treatment every year. We have outreach and education programs to over 100,000 people a year, and more importantly, we are actually in the field all around the world as well as here in Minnesota. The work we do is based on the best science available, which we both pay attention to and contribute to through research. The interesting thing about lead poisoning is that despite knowing what the problem is, despite knowing what the solution is, the situation in the clinic really doesn't change. We see the same percentage of adult eagles coming in with lead toxicity every year. As the admissions numbers go higher, the toxicities go higher.
I think it's one of these tip of the iceberg type things. We see the birds that come in here that are extremely clinically ill and affected and are close to dying in many cases. But we know from a lot of studies that have been done for decades that lead is a very, very toxic substance. Couple that with just our knowledge about how much lead is elaborated or spread out into the environment every year, hundreds of thousands of tons of it, I think we've got a much bigger problem than anybody really appreciates.
Society has gone through this acknowledgement in the past that, well, lead is bad in paint, it's bad in gasoline, it's bad in all these other additives. So all these other uses have been eliminated. But the one thing left, which is introducing a lot of lead into the environment, is through fishing tackle and hunting ammo. It hasn't been promoted enough, and a lot of hunters use the same ammunition they've used for decades, and they don't realize they're feeding lead-tainted venison to their spouses, to their children, their grandchildren. And if it's bad in Flint, Michigan, it has to be bad in Minnesota. Lead is a toxic material anywhere it's used.
This stuff doesn't go away. The lead does not. To see what once was a strong bird just quivering and gasping and crying out in pain, it's a symbol of our country. It's a symbol of strength, and to see it reduced to the point to where it can't control its own movements is just very gut-wrenching.
Hey, kiddo. I think over the years, rehabilitation, both wildlife and raptor rehabilitation, has become where it's more accepted than it used to be. Although we've always had positive feedback, especially from people who turn in injured birds. You have their full attention. By and large, I think most people are very positive about what we do. I enjoy just taking care of them from day to day, just the daily care. The worst part is watching them die from lead poisoning. It's really hard. But we keep trying. Can't give up.
If you want animals like the condors, and I'm sure there's other animals that eat carcasses to be on this planet while we're still on this planet, then you might want to think about using copper bullets. It can be done. It's just gonna take some time. just like anything. It's not gonna happen overnight.
It's a slower process, and it agonizes me, the fact that I know that until we get there, we're going to see a lot more dead bald eagles from lead poisoning. But as long as we can get there at some point, not too far down the road, I think we'll all come to a point that works for everybody.
In an age of doing everything digitally and hiding behind a keyboard, getting face-to-face with people, I think really is the only solution to these kind of problems.
It's not about criticizing hunting. It's about criticizing a material that we have been ignoring as a toxic substance for a long time.
If they're getting sick, there's something further down the food chain that's going wrong, and that's something that we have to keep in mind.
Hunters and ranchers know that they are playing a critical role in the preservation of condors by switching to non-lead ammunition, and that condors do depend on the carcasses that are left out there, and if those carcasses are clean, that's all the better.
When they make the choice to switch to copper, they are creating a future for condors and a future heritage we can all enjoy.
The easiest way to help these birds, the absolute most important thing you can do, is when you're out hunting, use copper bullets instead of lead bullets. That's going to by far have the biggest impact for these birds.
Why would we allow something to happen that causes that kind of suffering when we know there's an easy solution? There's an easy solution: use non-lead ammunition.
I think the more people that are on board with something like this, the more that will get done. Eventually, people have to notice.
For me, it's not all about the trigger pull anymore. I like to see game. If using copper bullets is what it takes for me to see game for the rest of my life, then I'm all for it.